purposes only. In India, violence flares up in Manipur again. Fresh protests over the killing of 2 teenagers by suspected militants. The teens were missing since July. Mobile internet services have been suspended for 5 days in Manipur. All schools have been closed till Friday. The US will let Israelis enter the country visa-free. The Biden administration has confirmed the move. Israeli nationals will now be able to travel to America without a visa starting the end of November. It comes after last week's meeting between US President Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. The French ambassador will leave Niger after weeks of tension. It comes 2 months after the coup which ousted its pro-Paris president. On Sunday, President Macron had announced that French troops will also withdraw from this country, from Niger. This was one of the demands of the junta. Big setback for TikTok, Facebook and Instagram in Indonesia. Jakarta has banned e-commerce transactions on social media platforms. The government says it's harming millions of small businesses. From now on, social media firms will not be able to conduct direct transactions, but they can promote products on their platforms. And the UK's first drug consumption room gets approved. The room is meant for users to take illegal drugs under medical supervision. The nearly $3 million facility will be open in Scotland. The idea was first proposed in 2006 during an HIV outbreak in Glasgow, Scotland's biggest city. Trudeau versus Canada. It's a story that is writing itself. Every day we see an escalation. Canada's defense of Khalistani terror, India's firm rejection of Trudeau's charges and his politics. This has now reached global forums. Yesterday, it was brought up at the United Nations General Assembly. India's External Affairs Minister S Jaishankar addressed world leaders. He said political convenience must not determine responses to terrorism. Without naming Canada, he called them out. Later in the day, he spoke at another event on the sidelines, and this time he was far more direct. Listen to this.
Our concern is that, it's really been very permissive because of political reasons. And, a lot of this is often justified as saying, well, that's how democracies work.
Classic Jaishankar does not mince his words, his tone is even and his message unambiguous. He said Canada is harboring extremists because it suits their politics. And it is this politics that is driving Canada's agenda, not any commitment to democratic values. It's unfortunate that this has to be said over and over again because Justin Trudeau's motivations are quite obvious. A textbook example of vote bank politics and justifying terrorism as freedom of expression. It's been more than a week since he spoke in Parliament. What has followed is more accusations and selective leaks. No proof though. What is Trudeau's biggest charge against India? That there's an Indian hand in the killing of a Khalistani terrorist in Canada. Trudeau says his allegations are credible and India must cooperate in the probe. Does that mean India is not cooperating? At least that seems to be the implication. Well, here is India's response.
We told the Canadians saying that, look, if you have something specific, if you have something relevant, let us know. We are open to looking at it.
If you have something specific or relevant, show us. It sounds like a fair argument. If Canada does have these so-called credible inputs, why is it shy of sharing them? The killing happened in the month of June. Khalistani terrorist Hardeep Singh Nijjar was shot dead in Canada. India calls him a designated terrorist. Canada calls him a plumber, a citizen and a Sikh activist. He was killed in June. 3 months later, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau raised his death, and that too in the Canadian Parliament. Must have been a high-profile plumber. Trudeau accused India of ordering the hit. India called the charge absurd. You know what else is absurd? Ottawa's charge of foreign interference, and this predates the current diplomatic dispute. Canada raised this in June. Trudeau's national security advisor issued a statement. Her name is Jodie Thomas. She was at a conference, and this is what she said, and I'm quoting, India is among the top sources of foreign interference in Canada. India is among the top sources of foreign interference in Canada. Jaishankar has spoken about this too. He said Canada is the one that interferes in Indian politics.
So we have a situation where actually our diplomats are threatened, our consulates have been attacked, and often comments are made about, there's interference in our politics.
He's talking about Khalistani terrorists. They want to break up India, and Canada is harboring and shielding them. Khalistanis have launched campaigns against India and its political leadership. They're targeting Indian missions and temples. Why is Canada supporting them? Is the Trudeau government a friend of Khalistanis? One of his ministers was asked this question. He rejected the charge, and this was last week. Now India has weighed in.
We have actually been badgering the Canadians. We've given them a lot of information about organized crime leadership, which operates out of Canada. There are a large number of extradition requests. There are terrorist leaders who have been identified.
Intelligence, information, extradition requests, India has given all of this, but Ottawa refuses to act.
We cannot bend the rules of state-to-state relations for political expediency, because we've seen and continue to see the extent to which democracies are under threat through various means of foreign interference.
That's Bob Rae, Canada's ambassador to the United Nations. His statement is being seen as a dig at India. But after getting off the podium, he took a completely different tone. He said he's discussed the Nijjar case with his Indian counterparts and that there is, quote-unquote, scope for diplomacy. Well, as they say, there's always scope for diplomacy, but Canada's selective leaks are not helping. The Washington Post has released a new report. It has a video that shows Nijjar's killing. At least 6 men and 2 vehicles were involved. The report says the attackers fired 50 bullets, 50. 34 of them hit Nijjar. The terrorist was killed outside a Gurudwara. A security camera there captured the shooting. When did the local police respond? Apparently, they were slow to arrive. There was disagreement between agencies, which led to further delays. The probe is still on. Meanwhile, the Speaker of Canada's Parliament has resigned. This is over the Nazi controversy. They gave a standing ovation to a war veteran. He turned out to be a Nazi. Trudeau, being Trudeau, said it was not his fault. So the Speaker is the fall guy. So there is no sign of resolution. Chances are this will get worse before it gets better. And what will that look like? We have seen diplomats being expelled. We've seen visa applications being suspended, which makes you wonder, what's next? Could India and Canada weaponize trade now? Perhaps wage a trade war? Right now, there are no indications of that happening. Neither government has tried to restrict bilateral trade, but there are some changes. For instance, the import of lentils from Canada is slowing, and this could be worrying because India buys a lot of lentils from Canada. It makes up more than 50% of our imports. Last year, that was worth around $370 million. And this year, the trade was going well until July. It was up around 420% from last year, a 420% jump. But since Trudeau's comments, things are shaky. Import offers from India have fallen by 6%. Indian buyers are looking at other sources like Australia. Some say the government could consider trade restrictions, and if that happens, how will it affect Indians? Well, lentils are a staple in this part of the world. We use them to make dal. So import restrictions will affect prices. It's very simple logic. You're curbing imports from your largest source of lentils, so lentil prices will increase, and that will worry the Indian government. Food prices are already up 11% in India. Trade restrictions could push them higher. Having said that, Canada too will feel the pinch. Their farmers produce 1.5 million tons of lentils. And how much of that does India buy? Around 1/3. So if New Delhi stops buying, Canadian farmers will lose out. Again, it's simple logic, less demand, lower price. So going forward, keep an eye out for lentil prices. There are no indications of any restrictions yet, but if this controversy escalates, who knows? We can't rule out a spillover on trade, which raises an important question. What will an India-Canada trade war look like? What is at stake here? At first glance, the pie is pretty small. Bilateral trade is worth around $8 billion. That's less than 1% of India's total trade. Same with foreign investments. In 20 years, Canada has invested $3.6 billion in India. That's around 0.5% of India's total FDI. Like I said, it's a small pie. But within this trade, a few items stand out. They're very important for both sides. We mentioned lentils. Another one is potash. It's a very important fertilizer. Last year, India struck a deal to import it from Canada. It's a 3-year agreement. Under this, India would buy 1.5 million tons of potash. To give you some context, India's total import is around 4 million tons. So this trade is very important, especially after the war in Ukraine. Russia and Belarus used to be the top suppliers to India, but that supply is now shaky. And what about India's exports to Canada? These are the top 5 items: pharma products, gems and jewelry, iron and steel, electricals, and organic chemicals. There is one item missing from this list, though, arguably more important than all of this, and that's human resource. Immigrants are the backbone of Canada's labour market. They make up 90% of the job growth, 90%. In other words, if 100 jobs are created, 90 of them are done by immigrants. And within that, Indians are the largest group. Around 20% of Canada's immigrants are from India, same with students. Indian students make up 28% of all foreign students in Canada. It's a big industry there. Students bring in $16 billion to Canada. They make up 1.3% of Canada's GDP. So the commercial exchanges may not be huge, but the constituents are important, like immigrants and students for Canada and lentils and potash for India. Both countries had realized this potential, hence the talks for a free trade agreement. India has now called off those talks. And New Delhi's argument is quite simple. Terror and trade cannot go hand in hand. It's an argument that India uses with Pakistan too. Such political standoffs inevitably affect trade relations. Governments may not publicly announce restrictions or bans, but traders will look elsewhere. They will look for safer options. Same with students. New Delhi has issued an advisory for Indians in Canada. There are security concerns, and it could force a rethink in many Indian families. Of course, this is all theoretical at this point. What actually happens depends on the political leadership, especially in Canada. They can opt for mature diplomacy, or they can escalate and cause a spillover. The signs so far have not been good. In China, a new game is underway. As the economy falters and the real estate sector struggles, Beijing is looking for a scapegoat, someone to shoulder the blame. And it could be this man, Hui Ka-yan. He's the chairman of Evergrande, the world's most indebted developer. Reports say Hui is in police custody. He was taken away earlier this month. And where is he now? Well, no one knows for sure. Some reports say that he is at a quote-unquote designated location, a residential surveillance, in other words, a house arrest. Now, here's something that you must know. When someone is held, it is never good news. But in China, it is very bad news. Such cases tend to follow a pattern. People are accused of corruption, they're sent to jail, or they just disappear. Sometimes they resurface. But by then, it's a completely different person with a significantly lower stature. Case in point, Jack Ma. You may remember his story. He wasn't even charged with the crime. He was just under scrutiny. The Communist Party targeted him and they destroyed the value of his businesses. Evergrande could be going down the same road, although their value is already destroyed. The company is the poster child of China's property crisis. Evergrande defaulted in the year 2021. By June this year, they owed over $300 billion. That's the size of their debt, $300 billion. They tried to manage this debt. They're still trying to restructure loans. And this effort is being supervised by Beijing, but it's not really helped them. The company's financial health has not improved. In August, Evergrande reported losses. In the last 2 years, the company lost $81 billion. In 2 years, $81 billion. Their shares slumped by 70%. This was after the August announcement. And it's been quite a fall for them. Evergrande was at its peak in the year 2017. One share was worth 31 Hong Kong dollars. That's about $4 US. The value of one share. And now, it is less than 1 Hong Kong dollar. Evergrande has become a penny stock. It has lost 99% of its value in the last 6 years, and it's going from bad to worse. This week, they missed another debt payment. A bond payment was due. They could not make it. The debt negotiations remain suspended. This week, some meetings were also scheduled. Evergrande officials had to meet creditors to discuss debt repayment, but the meetings were cancelled. Reason? Weak sales. The creditors are losing patience. They want their money back, and the prospects look bleak. Some of them have made a suggestion. They want Evergrande on the chopping block. In fact, there's a growing demand for this. Creditors want legal intervention. They say if Evergrande cannot come up with a plan, the company should be split and sold off for parts. Some creditors are getting hostile. Many cases have been filed against Evergrande. In the month of July alone, some 164 cases were filed against the company. This was over debt payments. And now there's another batch of 55 cases. What do these petitioners want? The freezing of Evergrande's assets. That's what they want. So the company is firefighting on multiple fronts. It's unsustainable. And Beijing seems to be gearing up to end this. Before rounding up the chairman, Chinese police also detained 2 former top officials, 2 men who served as the company's CEO and CFO. They've been picked up. Many others are under scrutiny. Police have detained many staffers. The company has not revealed the numbers or names, but reports say the arrests happened in Shenzhen, at the company headquarters. These officials might just be sacrificial lambs because the mess in China's property sector is much bigger and not their doing really. More companies are failing, like Country Garden. It has reported losses of over $150 billion, and this month it narrowly avoided a default. Sino-Ocean is another struggling developer. Earlier this month, it suspended its offshore debt payments. These are loan payments owed to the company's external lenders. Sino-Ocean has suspended payment for these loans. And why is that? Because they want to restructure. So the Evergrande collapse is not a one-off. The entire sector is in trouble and China does not want to take the blame for this. So they're pinning it on some officials. Global ratings agency Moody's is calling Beijing out. This month they issued a new assessment, and this is about China's property sector. Moody's has revised its outlook from stable to negative. This is for China's property sector, negative. It says China's support measures were not enough. In August, China lowered the mortgage rates. And for the first time, they also reduced down payment for home buyers. For first-time home buyers, the down payment value is going to be lesser. Now, Moody's does not think that this will work. It says the impact of these measures will be short-term and uneven. And this is an indictment. China's property bubble is bursting, the government's efforts to save it are failing, and Beijing is sacrificing some officials to absolve itself of all blame. Over in Pakistan, there is a new double game, this time over Ukraine. On paper, Pakistan is neutral in the war. They don't support Russia or Ukraine, but their actions suggest otherwise. On Tuesday, Pakistan received a shipment of Russian LPG. LPG is liquefied petroleum gas. It's mostly used for cooking. If LPG is expensive, household budgets go for a toss. And that's what's happening in Pakistan. Earlier this month, the caretaker government increased the price of LPG. It's now 20% higher. So Pakistan needs cheaper energy shipments. Enter Russia. Discounted Russian energy could solve Pakistan's problem. They've already imported 1 shipment of Russian crude oil. This LPG is the second shipment. Reports say talks are underway for yet another one. Now let's look at 3 basic questions about this trade. Number 1, how much LPG has Russia delivered? Around 100,000 metric tons. How much does Pakistan use every year? Around 1.8 million tons. So just a fraction of the demand. Question number 2, how did the shipment reach Pakistan? Through an Iranian corridor. You see, most Western shipping agencies have cut off ties with Russia, only shady ones remain. The Russian embassy, in fact, thanked Iran for helping with the delivery. And finally, question number 3, how did Pakistan pay for this? With Chinese currency. The exact amount has not been revealed, but Russia has been accepting the yuan recently. So that's the economics of it. What about the politics? By buying Russian energy, Pakistan is playing a double game. You may be wondering why. After all, even India buys Russian energy. How is this any different? Because Pakistan is also giving weapons to Ukraine. Islamabad denies this allegation, but multiple reports have nailed their role. Tanks and ammunition have been sent from Pakistan to Ukraine. We've reported this in the past. Some reports also say it was a barter. Pakistan sent weapons, and in return, the US approved their IMF bailout. Do you know what's strange about this equation? Russia's silence. They have blasted Western countries for arming Ukraine, but on Pakistan, they are silent. This year marked 75 years of diplomatic relations between Islamabad and Moscow. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov had a special message for Pakistan. Listen to how he ended that message.
We are willing to work together on further engagement of our countries and peoples, strengthening mutually beneficial relations in politics, security, economy, education, in cultural and humanitarian fields, as well as in other areas. Pakistan Rusi Dosti Zindabad.
Pakistan Rusi Dosti Zindabad, he said, meaning long live Pakistan-Russia friendship. Remember, this is a country that is arming Ukraine, a country that is keen on American support, that was once a US ally. So why is Russia giving Pakistan such a long rope? Because equations are changing. The US is not a fully committed partner for Pakistan anymore. Their new best friend is China. They're called Iron Brothers, in fact. And that's the common ground between Moscow and Islamabad, their relations with China. Just consider this LPG shipment. How did Pakistan pay for it? Using the Chinese yuan. And this reset between Pakistan and Russia started before the war. Former Prime Minister Imran Khan visited Russia in 2022. In fact, he was there when the war began. It was the first such visit in 23 years. Imran Khan landed in Moscow on the 23rd of February. The next day, Putin announced his invasion. Today, Imran Khan is in jail, but his outreach mission has continued. Pakistan is buying Russian crude oil and LPG. Could this evolve into a strategic relationship, one that could worry India? Seems unlikely as of now because Pakistan has very little control over its own policy. They need Western help with bailouts. They need China's help with loans. And they need Russia for cheap energy. So Islamabad will find it hard to take sides, really. As for Russia, it's a painless gamble. They lose nothing by engaging with Pakistan. In a best-case scenario, they stand to gain a lot, in fact. Influence in Afghanistan and Central Asia, connectivity projects, and also some leverage over their traditional partner, India. That's what Russia stands to gain. I know this sounds like a good deal for Pakistan, maybe a bit like India's strategic autonomy. But you see, Pakistan's policy is anything but autonomous. It's a case of strategic helplessness. Not just countries, many companies are also going through the same phase of helplessness. One of them is Byju's, the Indian edtech company based in Bengaluru. Their story is well documented. An impressive rise during the pandemic, a rushed expansion plan, and now a case study on how not to run a startup. Byju's is in the news again, which obviously means they're cutting more jobs. Reports say up to 4,000 employees could be fired. Even senior management is at risk. It's part of their new cost-cutting measure. You see, Byju's is facing a number of financial challenges, but the most pressing one is this: a loan worth $1.2 billion. The lenders want their money back. So what's the company's strategy? Well, a new CEO has taken over. He took over last week. He plans to shake things up at Byju's. And in the corporate world, that often means firing people. The company presently has 35,000 employees. Up to 4,000 of them could be fired. That's around 12% of their workforce. At its peak, Byju's had 52,000 employees. This was during the pandemic in 2021. That was their peak. But beyond firing people, what is the rescue plan? Reports say Byju's wants to bring more students to offline centers, which is a bit strange because their whole brand was built around online learning, and now they're going offline. Another strategy is divesting foreign assets. Remember the famous Byju's acquisition spree? They were buying edtech centers for fun. Well, that has backfired. The company is now looking to sell off foreign assets, like Epic, which was acquired for $500 million, and Great Learning, which was bought for some $600 million. But will it be enough? You see, Byju's is not just any startup. It was the startup in India. Its founder, Baiju Ravindran, had rock star popularity. And now, he's accused of financial mismanagement. Byju's has lost 75% of its value since last year. Thousands of employees have been fired. They're also facing lawsuits in the US. One of them details an interesting revelation. Last year, Byju's transferred $500 million to a US hedge fund. It was called Camshaft Capital. Their address doesn't have a hedge fund office though. It's a pancake shop. So the lawsuit claims Byju's hid the money there. And such stories can be damning. They don't just hurt Byju's, they hurt the image of India's startup industry. Dream11 is a similar case. Chances are you've heard about this company. It's an online fantasy league for sports. You make a team, you pay some money, and if your picks were good, you win big. Basically, it's betting with some skill involved. In 2019, Dream11 became a unicorn. Its valuation hit $1 billion. Today, the company sponsors the Indian cricket team's jersey, probably the most coveted marketing real estate. But this week, Dream11 got a notice. It was accused of evading taxes. And how much money are we talking about? 40,000 crore rupees. It's the largest claim in India's indirect taxation history, 40,000 crores of tax evasion. Dream11 has disputed this. They filed a lawsuit in the Mumbai High Court. So what's the deal here? Dream11 says it should pay tax on what it charges customers, basically their fees. The government says the total gaming revenue should be taxed, and that too at 28%. It's now up to the court to decide. But legalities aside, there's a story here, both with Byju's and Dream11. These were supposed to be India's success stories, the big shiny unicorns. And now look at them. One is struggling to repay loans, the other is accused of tax evasion. These reports are coming at a bad time for the startup industry, not just in India, but all over the world. This quarter was especially bad. Indian startups received $1.5 billion this quarter. That's a 5-year low. And despite that, India is actually one of the bright spots. A recent survey looked at startups which received more than $50 million in funding, and India ranked 4th on their list. Only the US, China and the UK ranked above India. So the backdrop is a delicate one. There is a global investment winter, but India is somehow beating the trend. And in that context, such headlines can be counterproductive. They can scare investors away. Having said that, it's also an opportunity, a chance to show financial resilience, a chance to make things right and to hold people accountable. Investors look at these attributes too. So this period of trouble is a litmus test for Indian startups. The brave will survive, the others won't. And now let's turn our focus to the war in Ukraine. Details of a new report have come out, a report from Kiev to its allies. It talks about the drones that have been tormenting Ukraine. Iran's Shahid kamikaze drones. Russia fires them, and it has used these drones extensively against Ukraine, often to devastating effect. So obviously, stopping these drones should be top priority for Kiev and for its Western allies. But this new report says the opposite is happening. Instead of stopping the drones from Russia, the West is helping make more. You see, Iran has been bypassing sanctions. It has been getting its hands on Western technology, and it's using it to build these Shahids. So despite the best efforts, the West has become Iran's unwilling accomplice. Here's a report.
Every day, Russian terrorists hit our towns and villages with rockets and Shahids.
That was from Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's war update last night. He specifically mentioned the Shahids, Iranian kamikaze drones. Last September was the first time their use was reported in the Ukraine war. Since then, they've become ubiquitous. There are two types of Shahids commonly seen in Ukrainian skies: the 131 and the 136. They're both triangular and have bulbous noses. They're also said to be loud and not very agile. They aren't exactly the cutting edge of design. But none of that really matters. These drones excel at their intended purpose, flying into the enemy and blowing up on impact. Russia has been using these drones to bombard Ukraine for months. Every other day you hear about Russian drone attacks on vital infrastructure, which poses some serious questions. How many drones did Iran give Russia? How is Iran making so many drones? Why aren't sanctions working to stop Russia's drone supply? Well, it seems Ukraine finally has the answers to some of these questions. Last month, Kyiv sent a 47-page document to the G7 governments. The G7, or Group of Seven, is made up of the US, UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, Canada, plus the EU. Basically, all of Ukraine's major allies. It turns out, these allies are largely responsible for the proliferation of the Shaheds. They've been making parts that Iran uses in its drones. The report says 52 Western electrical components were found in the Shahed 131. 57 were in the Shahed 136. The components were manufactured in Poland, the Netherlands, Ireland, and even the ever-neutral Switzerland. Now you may wonder, how did the Western governments let this happen? How could they help Russia? Well, it's not that simple. Unlike in the past, with oil, diamonds, fertilizers and whatnot, this time they weren't helping Russia directly. It's just very difficult to track the components Iran used. In fact, even Ukraine didn't really blame them. The paper lists components like fuel pumps, voltage regulators, transistors, integrated circuits, and so on. These are all relatively common electrical components, manufactured in millions. So it wasn't difficult for Iran to find some, even though the Western firms didn't trade with it directly. The Ukrainian report says Iran imported some of these materials from countries like Turkey, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, India and Vietnam. It's quite possible. In an interconnected world like the one we live in today, how do you expect to control fuel pump sales? Ukraine understands that in this case, sanctions are pointless. Instead, Kyiv has bolder plans.
We clearly see which areas of pressure on Russia should be strengthened to prevent terrorist capabilities from growing. Sanctions are not enough. There will be more. There will be more of our own Ukrainian actions against the terrorist state.
When Ukraine gave the report to the G7 last month, it had a suggestion. If the West gave it weapons, it would conduct missile strikes on drone production plants in Iran, Syria and deep within Russia. Yes, Kyiv wants to shell not just Russia, but Iran and Syria too. Ukraine says Iran has been outsourcing the drone production. It now makes some Shaheds in Syria. And it has also helped Russia set up a plant, apparently in Russia's central region of Tatarstan. That's about 1,500 kilometers deep within Russian territory. Ukraine wants to bomb all these places and ask the West for more missiles to take these plants down. It's an ambitious but unrealistic plan. The West may not be able to stop electrical components to Iran, but it's still unlikely to let Ukraine start World War III.
Vantage continues after a short break.
Well as critically. We are yet to get word from the makers of the movie, but the news just coming in is that this has been selected as India's official entry into the Oscars.
It was a 17-member panel, Neetu, that decided on which film is going to make the cut. 2018 was chosen the winner, and in the past we've seen several criticisms come to the fore as far as Oscar entries are concerned, but perhaps this is going to be either unanimous decision, so to say, or there are very little faults that are going to be found with this particular decision, don't you think?
Yes, that's what we think, because as I said, even when the movie released also, it was well received. There has been several criticism earlier related to the entries from the country, especially when it comes to entries like this. There's always been concern from the southern industries, especially from the
Being the president of a country is a delicate balancing act. Being the president of the United States of America, even more so. Ask Joe Biden. He tiptoes through diplomatic minefields every day. He walks the tightrope of domestic policy. We can't say if he does a very good job of that. But when it comes to walking on solid, hard ground, he is obviously bad. The US president is often caught tripping or stumbling. You saw that. Biden's stumbles make more news than his policies, and that's saying something. So his team now has a new mission: prevent the president from tripping. Sounds like quite the mission impossible. But let's look at their plan for now. It's not very drastic. Just a few extra measures here and there. One of them is wearing tennis shoes. Biden has swapped his formal shoes for tennis kicks. They're less slippery, which means more grip. The other is shorter stairs on Air Force One. That is Biden's presidential plane. That is the US presidential plane. He uses it whenever he travels. Now, if you've tracked his visits, you must know that this set of stairs is his arch nemesis. He has tripped on them multiple times. So his team found the perfect solution: reduce the number of steps. The fewer the steps, the lesser the chance of tripping. It sounds simple, right? But it's not going so well for them, because Biden is still tripping. In fact, he nearly slipped on the stairs yesterday. He just arrived in Michigan, he was getting off the aircraft, and just like that, he nearly slips again. It was not major, but you can see him losing balance there. So shorter steps are surely not helping. And these falls hurt him, not just physically, but also politically. Because America is going to polls next year. Biden will turn 81 this year. If he wins the election, he'll be 86 by the time he completes the next term. And that's really old. So Americans are concerned. Age discrimination may be banned in the workplace, but the president's employers, the people of America, are not shy about their bias. 3 out of 4 American adults think that Biden is too old for office. 3 out of 4. They say he won't be an effective president in the second term. And what does Biden say about this? Does he agree with them? Listen to this.
I tell you what. Someone said, you know, that Biden, he's getting old, man. I tell you what. Well, guess what? Guess what? You know, the only thing that comes with age is a little bit of wisdom. I've been doing this longer than anybody, and guess what? I'm going to continue to do it with your help.
You heard that. He makes a good point. But wisdom is not the only thing that comes with age, you see. Age also brings health-related issues like immobility or balancing difficulties, and Biden is already facing some of them. In fact, Democrats are not so worried about Trump rising in the polls. They're more worried about Biden falling down. And remember, this is a sitting president. Election should be a breeze for him. Usually, odds are always in favor of the incumbent. But in Biden's case, his age is a big issue, because while elections are fought on policies, they're also fought on perceptions. Take the 1960 election, for example. Richard Nixon was debating John F. Kennedy. It was the first presidential TV debate in America. Some 70 million people tuned in. Nixon had just left the hospital. He wasn't wearing any makeup, and he was sweating profusely. Kennedy, on the other hand, was charismatic. I'm sure what they said also influenced their voters, but most experts say Nixon's sweat cost him the polls. Kennedy won that election. A similar scene played out in 1996. Republican Bob Dale was against Democrat Bill Clinton. Dale was 73 years old. He'd had a terrible fall ahead of the elections. He fell off the campaign platform, and the picture of him falling went viral. Clinton, on the other hand, was energetic and younger. He won. Long story short, appearances do matter in elections. The only saving grace for Biden is that his top opponent is not exactly spring chicken. If Biden is old, so is Donald Trump. He's 77 years old. If he wins, he'll be 82 by the time he completes his second term. And guess what? Half of US adults say Trump too is too old for office. Basically, America has no choice. It must pick one of these two old white men. And it must grapple with that age-old question. How old is too old to become the President of the United States? Weddings are typically a time of celebration, but for a couple in Iraq, festivities quickly transformed into a tragedy. Last night, a fire swept through a wedding hall. This happened in the district of Hamdania. This is a predominantly Christian area in northern Iraq. Eyewitnesses say flames engulfed the entire building. Most attendees were unable to escape, and now more than 100 people are dead. At least 150 others are injured. Search and rescue operations are still underway. Prime Minister Mohammed Shia al-Sudani has called for an investigation. What caused the fire, and how are people coping with this loss? Here's a report.
At least 100 people dead, over 150 injured, rubble everywhere, filled with charred furniture, stray shoes, and burned mobile phones. But that's not all. A sense of disbelief overpowers the grief. No one had expected a loss like this, especially during a celebration. Last night, a newlywed couple was dancing at their wedding party. It was being held at a party hall in the district of Hamdania, a predominantly Christian area in northern Iraq. That's when flares were fired towards the ceiling to celebrate the joyous occasion. It's a wedding tradition, though flares are supposed to be used outside. And that's when it happened. A voluminous bunting on the ceiling caught fire, and the flames spread rapidly. Chaos ensued. Electricity went out immediately. No one knows why. People didn't know where to go. They started bumping into furniture and falling on the ground. Meanwhile, the fire moved with astonishing speed. The hall was packed with over 1,000 people, and only some were able to escape.
We were at the wedding party during the fire. My mother-in-law fell over. We were sitting next to the kitchen, and when the door opened, we got out of there, or else we would never have been able to escape.
For others, it wasn't clear where the exits were. Eventually, firefighters arrived. As the fire intensified, a bulldozer was used to knock openings in the wall. The goal was to help people escape. But the sudden influx of oxygen only fanned the flames, which engulfed the entire building and killed many from suffocation or burn injuries.
I have more than 20 relatives there. My friend's entire family was killed. My friend, his children, his mother and his wife, everyone. Entire families have been killed.
Search and rescue operations are underway. Officials say the death toll is likely to rise. The Iraqi Red Crescent says nearly 450 people are dead, but there's no clarity. The Iraqi government has issued a 3-day national mourning period. Prime Minister Mohammad Shia al-Sudani has called for an investigation. While officials take stock of the situation, the country copes with not only grief but also anger. Eyewitnesses and experts say the situation got out of hand because of logistical and infrastructure problems. The use of flares could be the main reason behind the flames. But that's not all. There's speculation that illegal flammable materials were used in the building. They contributed to the rapid spread of the blaze. Some say had there not been a power outage, more people could have gotten out safely. On top of this, when firefighters rushed to the scene, onlookers said their hoses did not work at first. So, who is responsible for this tragedy, for this negligence that cut short so many lives? While we wait for the investigation to find the answers, the lives of so many have been changed forever.
And now let's turn our attention to Haiti, a Caribbean nation that faces a severe humanitarian crisis. With each passing day, it spirals deeper into turmoil. On the one hand, gangs are seizing control of Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince. They have commandeered up to 90% of the city. On the other hand, there are vigilantes who prefer to fight it out with machetes. Across Haiti, about 200,000 people have been displaced. Millions are struggling to eat. About a year ago, the country issued a plea. It urged foreign troops to intervene. And guess who stepped up? Kenya. Kenya is poised to lead a peacekeeping mission to Haiti with resources and support coming in from the US. This week, the two countries, Kenya and the US, signed a defense agreement. The question is, can the East African nation of Kenya bring order to Haiti in the Caribbean? Here's a report.
Haiti is one of the America's most unstable places. But this week, things got even more dramatic. All thanks to Jimmy Cherizier, a former police officer. Affectionately, even reverentially, he's referred to as Barbecue. This may sound funny, but don't let the name fool you. His actions are no laughing matter, because as we said, he is a former police officer. Today, Barbecue is Haiti's most powerful gang boss. This week he took to the streets, calling for an armed uprising to overthrow the country's Prime Minister, Ariel Henry.
Every ghetto will be on the streets every day, and we have nothing to hide from the whole world. They all know that we have weapons. Not only do we mobilize to fight Ariel Henry, we also mobilize the people. Our fight will also be with weapons against Ariel Henry.
And for the Caribbean nation's government, this is probably icing on a bloody cake, since with each passing day, the nation is spiraling deeper into turmoil. Gangs are seizing control of one part of Haiti's capital after another. Today, 90% of Port-au-Prince is under their control. Over the past few months, there has been an explosion of killings, kidnappings and sexual violence. Bodies are seen lying on the streets. Most of the neighborhoods are heavily barricaded. Gang checkpoints regularly block food supply. Now, millions are struggling to eat, and over 200,000 people are displaced. The Haitian government has not been successful in curbing the gangs, so a citizen-led vigilante movement has been born. It claims to protect the people, while vigilantes run amok with machetes in hand, quite literally. The crisis is only intensifying, so about a year ago, the country's fragile government issued a desperate plea. It urged foreign troops to step in and help. Guess who volunteered to help? An East African nation, Kenya. If Kenya does step in, it would be the first time an African nation leads a mission in one of the America's conflict-ridden places. Kenya has pledged to send 1,000 security officers to Haiti. Their main goal would be to combat gang violence. Currently, the mission is pending the UN's formal approval, but things are in motion. It has received support from the US. This week, Kenya and the US signed a defense agreement.
The United States stands ready to support that mission by providing robust financial and logistical assistance. And we intend to work with the United States Congress to provide up to $100 million in support. And we urge others in the international community to follow Kenya's great example and to step up and to provide more personnel, equipment, support, training, and funding.
In fact, Kenyan security officials have even started learning French, one of the main languages of Haiti. But the scale of Haiti's crisis is massive. Will deploying just 1,000 officers be enough? Compare this with interventions by the US and Brazil. In 1994, the US intervened in Haiti with a force of 21,000 personnel. About a decade later, Brazil did the same with 13,000. What Kenya is offering is not even 1/10 of that. But Kenya wants to go ahead with this, hoping to inspire Pan-African unity. And this is not the first time it's sending troops abroad.
Kenya has a very long history of global peacekeeping. We were in Kosovo, we were in Namibia, we were everywhere. We are now in Somalia, we are in DRC. We have our officers in the Tigray monitoring and evaluation mechanism.
That may be true, but it isn't without criticism. Kenyan law enforcement officers have been accused of using excessive force, carrying out extrajudicial killings, and conducting arbitrary arrests. So while Kenya says it can bring order to Haiti, doubts are swirling. And a rifle-toting, machete-wielding pushback awaits its troops.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Philadelphia, a mob ransacked an Apple store, stealing iPhones, iPads and other products. In Mexico, a bear turned up as an unexpected guest at a family picnic. And who wins the race when there is only one person running? A sprinter in India competed in a 100-meter race alone after other runners skipped it over rumors of a surprise doping test. Finally, we are taking you back in history. On this day in 1996, the Taliban captured the Afghan capital of Kabul for the first time, establishing the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. They then tortured and killed former President Mohammad Najibullah before hanging his body from a traffic post. The Taliban's first stint in power came with strict rules like head-to-toe coverings for women, a ban on music and TV. We leave you on that note. Thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Germany running.
Oh shit, what's up?
Their films are not really considered. It's only one section of the movies that are considered. But this time, all this has been laid to rest. There has been huge technical aspects also involved in this movie, because we saw the extent of damage and how the floods were in 2018 when it had happened in the state of Kerala. So they had created all this, the flood situation. I mean, all this. So technically also, it was at a different level.
Right, do stay on with me. Jude Anthony is now joining us on the phone line. So thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Congratulations to you, first of all. Your first reaction to being the official entry of India to the Oscars.
I am really thankful to the people of Kerala for staying together during the flood time, and this is a tribute to the Kerala people, the Malayalis, the Indians. So I am very happy, and I am very much honored to get this. What you say? I can't express my happiness over the phone. I'm really happy.
Absolutely, Mr. Anthony. Was this expected, or were you surprised when this announcement was made?
I was very much surprised to get this call. I am so excited. This was not expected, and thank God, thank you to the film fraternity of India.
One last question before I let you go. Have you spoken to any of your cast or crew members? Have you spoken to...
No, this is the first call I got regarding the same, so I have to call them after this call, get connected and disconnected, and I have to call my family, or everybody will be waiting for this.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. Congratulations to you and to your entire team. We do hope to catch up with you and the team perhaps later in the day as well. But thank you so much for speaking with us here on CNN News 18. 2018, the Malayalam film is official entry of India to the Oscars. It was a 22 shortlisted movie list, out of which we now see 2018 as the chosen one. It is the chosen entry to the 2024 Oscar Awards. This is a film that is a survival drama. It talks about tales of despair, it talks about tales of hope, and those of unsung heroes as far as the Kerala floods are concerned. Floods and stories that Kerala had not witnessed in decades together. All of that was brought from real to real, and that is going to be India's official entry to 2024 Oscar Awards. On that note, slipping into a quick break, back in just a few minutes. India's Oscar entry has now been announced. We're given to understand that Malayalam film 2018 is the official entry to the Oscars for 2024. That announcement has just come to the fore a short while ago. That press conference was happening even as we speak. Vishal Chatkara, my colleague, now joining us, getting us more details on this. Yes, Vishal.
Well, congratulations to everybody, because 2018 film that celebrates the spirit of people of Kerala has been chosen as India's Oscar entry. There was a lot of anticipation around other films, other Hindi films like the Kerala story, but the jury actually shortlisted 22 films, and out of that they watched each one of them, and there were a lot of hype around this, but this Trevino's Thomas Starrer is the winner. It talks about people of Kerala who came together to help each other during the 2018 flood. it starred Tovino Thomas. Many congratulations to the director, to the team, and now all eyes at the Oscars, where the film will be competing in the official foreign language film category.
And Vishal, it wasn't just a critically acclaimed movie, it was also a commercially hit movie, isn't it? It was the highest grossing Malayalam film of all time.
Very warm welcome. You're watching CNN News 18. I'm Akanksha Swaroop. Amid escalating tensions between India and Canada, External Affairs Minister Dr. S Jaishankar has taken a veiled dig at Canada, this while addressing the United Nations General Assembly, and said that political convenience should not determine counterterrorism. Meanwhile, S Jaishankar, speaking at an event at the Council of Foreign Ministers, fiercely hit out at the Canadian government for creating a permissible space for terrorism and extremism due to politics within the country. He further asked the Canadian government to share evidence it has found against India. Dr. S Jaishankar also called out the extremism in Canada and said that Indian diplomats are threatened and the consulates are attacked in Canada. Let's also listen.
Canada actually has seen a lot of organized crime, relating to, the secessionist forces, organized crime, violence, extremism. They're all very, very deeply mixed up. So, in fact, we have been, talking about specifics and information. We have actually been badgering the Canadians. We have given them a lot of information about organized crime leadership, which operates out of Canada. There are a large number of extradition requests. There are terrorist leaders who have been identified. So do understand that there is an environment out there. Our diplomats are threatened. Our consulates have been attacked. And often comments are made about, there's interference in our politics. A lot of this is often justified as saying, well, that's how democracies work. If you have to understand what is going on out there. And our concern is that, it's really been very permissive because of political reasons. I'm not part of the Five Eyes. I'm certainly not part of the FBI. So I think you're asking the wrong person. I'm not part of the Five Eyes. I'm certainly not part of the FBI. So I think you're asking the wrong person.
At the same time, as we put great emphasis on the importance of equality, we also have to uphold the values of free and democratic societies. We cannot bend the rules of state-to-state relations for political expediency, because we've seen and continue to see the extent to which democracies are under threat through various means of foreign interference. But the truth is, if we don't adhere to the rules that we've agreed to, the very fabric of our open and of our free societies may start to tear.
So I made comments on this yesterday. I can restate them here, which is that we are obviously quite concerned about the situation in Canada. We've cooperated closely with our Canadian counterparts, and we have urged India to cooperate in that investigation, and will continue to do so. And India remains an important partner of the United States. We work with them on a number of issues, but of course, on this matter, we urge them to cooperate with the Canadian investigation.
CNN News 18's Anand Narasimhan spoke with international political scholar Ian Hall on the strained India-Canada ties over Hardeep Singh Nijjar's murder. Let's listen in to what he has to say.
Let me first ask you, how would you see this entire